of cinema is one full of the sort of surprises and shocks that, when done well, can rarely be matched. Part of the charm of movies is in how they can catch you off guard, can make you raise an eyebrow, or can simply rock you to your core with a certain revelation. For some special films though, they're able to generate this sort of reaction just from their opening few moments, and it's on those pictures that the attention is on here. And so with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 movie sequels that started in surprising ways. Number 10. Jaws: The Revenge. Even fans of all four Jaws pictures can't honestly claim that Jaws: The Revenge is anything but a dumpster fire of a movie. Still, one thing the film does have going for it is a rather shocking opening few moments. With Brody siblings Michael and Sean having taken centre stage in the Roy Scheider-less Jaws 3D in 1983, it was only natural to presume that the series would continue to spotlight these brothers as yet another toothy threat reared its head in the fourth Jaws offering. While Michael and Sean were indeed featured in Jaws: The Revenge, it was only a fleeting appearance for poor Sean. Played by Mitchell Anderson, the younger Brody brother was killed in The Revenge's opening minutes. Having followed in the footsteps of his father Martin, who had died off screen due to a heart attack, Sean is a man of the law by the time of Jaws: The Revenge. Sent to clear a log that's blocking a buoy, Anderson's character has his arm bitten off by a great white shark before his apex predator then drags the screaming Sean to his watery demise. From here, The Revenge sends Brody family matriarch Ellen to stay with Michael in Barbados, where they are inexplicably stalked by a great white with a personal grudge against the Brody clan. Number 9. Thor: Love and Thunder. Having quietly wowed with Eagle vs Shark, Boy, What We Do in the Shadows, and Hunt for the Wilder People, director Taika Waititi impressed plenty with how he brought his unique humour and heart to Thor Ragnarok in 2017. So when Waititi was confirmed to return to helm last year's Thor: Love and Thunder, hope was high that this would be yet another home run for the New Zealander. Unfortunately, Love and Thunder is one of the most divisive movies in the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here, Waititi's worst instincts were turned up to 11, resulting in a picture that fell flat as the filmmaker struggled for restraint. This was apparent as soon as Love and Thunder's first few minutes were done, with the movie bizarrely trivializing some of the most traumatic moments in MCU history. After briefly introducing us to Christian Bale's Gore the God Butcher, it's when Thor first resurfaces when the red flags really start waving, as the Waititi-voiced Korg regales a group of youngsters with the Thunder God's backstory. It's done in such an overly quirky, cheery way that almost pokes fun at some extremely heavy moments, such as the murder of Thor's mother, the death of his father, the slaughtering of Loki, the demise of Heimdall, and the complete destruction of Asgard. Tonally, Korg's diatribe was way off the mark, but then again, so was Thor: Love and Thunder altogether. Number 8. Scream 2. While the movie within a movie concept is nowadays commonplace for the Scream franchise, this was a genuinely surprising development upon a first watch of Scream 2. Of course, said movie within a movie is Stab and the subsequent sequels that faux flick has spawned, with that initial Stab offering delivering a retelling of the infamous murders of the first Scream picture. Horror hounds were first introduced to this loose adaptation of those 1996 Woodsboro killings in the opening moments of the second Scream effort. As Scream 2 opens, we hone in on Jada Pinkett's Maureen and Omar Epps' Phil, two college lovebirds on a date to watch Stab. While getting to see Heather Graham yuck it up as Casey Becker is fun, the biggest surprise of this Scream sequel's opening is how it yet again opts to fool audiences with the major star of the poster shock. By that, that's a reference to how the original Scream held Drew Barrymore front and centre on all its marketing material, only to fool us by offing Barrymore's Casey in the film's brutal, brilliant initial sequence. Skip ahead to Scream 2, and Wes Craven went and did it again. This time it was Jada Pinkett who was prominently featured in the promotional material for this follow-up. Catching many off guard, Pinkett's Maureen is slaughtered in the cinema by Ghostface during the aforementioned Stab screening, with those in attendance alongside Maureen believing that this murder is all merely part of the show. Number 7. Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. Clearly one of the most divisive entries in the greatest Star Wars franchise, The Last Jedi unarguably had a rather surprising opening. For so much of The Force Awakens, Rey had been on a quest to track down one of the most legendary of Jedi Masters, the one and only Luke Skywalker. When Daisy Ridley's character did find Luke, that meeting lasted for approximately 10 seconds before The Force Awakens came to an abrupt halt. As such, anticipation was high to see Luke and Rey properly share the screen together in The Last Jedi, with the iconic face of the original trilogy getting to take the rookie under his sage, wise wing. In a left-field move though, this absolutely wasn't the case when Episode 8 starts up. Once a brief space fight sequence was out of the way, The Last Jedi picks things up exactly where it left off with Luke and Rey, with the relative newcomer handing Skywalker his own lightsaber over to him as a way to break the ice, to show her intentions, and to sit under the learning tree of Master Luke. Catching near enough everybody off guard, Skywalker simply tosses the lightsaber over his shoulder, makes it clear he has zero interest in training Rey, and soon ends up taking a grizzled, grumpy swig of milk from the teat of a Tharla siren. Number 6. Rocky Balboa. Barely 2 minutes into its runtime, and before the opening credits have even finished, 2006's Rocky Balboa hits you with an absolute gut punch. The first Rocky movie for 16 years, with the disappointing Rocky V released in 1990, Rocky Balboa had long-time franchise fans holding back the tears as soon as we first catch back up with Sylvester Stallone's Balboa. As we get reintroduced to the Italian stallion, he feeds his pet turtles, does a couple of pull-ups in his yard, and then we get the major curveball of seeing Rocky at the grave of his wife Adrian. Yep, it turns out that between the events of Rocky V and Rocky Balboa, poor Adrian had passed away after a battle with cancer. To start the film off on such an emotional note was a bold decision from writer-director Stallone, but it's one that immediately sets the table to let audiences know that this is a picture that's far removed from the cheesier outings of the franchise. Likewise, to add further emotional weight, we're then soon introduced to the Adrian's restaurant Rocky owns, complete with plentiful portraits of his deceased bride. Number 5. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Not just is the start of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 somewhat surprising, but so too is the entire film when comparing it to its predecessor. Tobe Hooper's 1974 original stands as one of the most chilling, atmospheric, jarring, traumatic, and all-out disturbing films of its time and beyond. With a group of unsuspecting young adults stumbling upon the secluded home of Leatherface and his family, the bodies soon begin to pile up as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre grabs you by the collar and refuses to let you go across its intense 83-minute runtime. When Hooper brought a sequel to the silver screen in 1986, the opening of the movie immediately raised an eyebrow or two from those expecting plenty of familiar Texas Chainsaw Massacre shenanigans. Granted, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 does bring plenty of chainsaws to the dance, yet it's the way in which the action is delivered which instantly catches you unaware. Rather than the visceral, ominous terror of the 74 movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2's opening sequence is almost played for laughs. We see a couple of obnoxious jocks annoy fellow drivers and ring into a local radio station as they drive on a Texas highway. From the presentation of these dickheads and Stretch, the radio DJ they harass, it quickly becomes apparent that this is a very different film to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that's before a roaring, dummy dancing Leatherface turns up on the back of a truck to cheesily attack these college kids. The big surprise about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2's opening moments is that it's clear this is a more tongue-in-cheek, almost comedic picture when compared to the dread and stench of what has gone before. Number 4. Mission Impossible 3. There are few greater ways to surprise an audience than by offering a significant character in your opening moments. Step forward, Mission Impossible 3. Kind of. As J.J. Abrams' 2006 directorial debut starts, we're greeted by a scene of Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt and his wife Julia held hostage and strapped to some chairs. With this all being part of a plan of nefarious arms dealer Owen Davian, this rogue intends to kill Julia unless Ethan gives him answers. Shockingly, Philip Seymour Hoffman's Davian does indeed go ahead and shoot Julia in the head when he doesn't get what he wants. With that, the ever-shocking Mission Impossible franchise served up arguably its greatest shock, as audience were left stunned at what they'd just witnessed. Well, that is until the opening credits end and we get the reveal that the person Davian killed was actually his own translator who was sporting a mask to look like Ethan's bow. Of course, this all sets the wheels in motion for the crews to hunt down Davian and rescue his kidnapped wife, which of course he manages to do by the time Mission Impossible 3 rolls to a close. Number 3. Terminator Dark Fate. While the Terminator franchise is one that's continuously struggled to hit the heady heights of 1991's Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Rise of the Machines, Salvation, and Genesis all disappointing audiences, there was a genuine excitement ahead of Terminator Dark Fate's release in 2019. What was the cause of this excitement? Why, it was because director Tim Miller was getting the T2 gang back together. Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 may have been part of Rise of the Machines and Genesis, but Dark Fate promised to bring back Linda Hamilton and and Edward Furlong as Sarah Connor and her son John. Sure, the John character may have been featured in all 3 post-T2 films, but that was without Furlong reprising his most famous role. So the prospect of Ed Furlong picking things back up as the saviour of mankind was a hugely intriguing one. What role would Furlong's John have to play? What had he been up to in the days since Terminator 2? Did he manage to fulfill his destiny as the person to halt Judgment Day and stop the rise of the machines? Well, to the disappointment of many, Terminator Dark Fate's only use for Edward Furlong was as a John Connor reference for CGI purposes and to do 1 day's worth of motion capture work. That was because John's role in Dark Fate was merely to be featured in a 1998 set flashback sequence where the teenager is killed by a T-800 in the movie's surprising opening sequence. Number 2. Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame was expected to be an epic battle for the ages between Thanos and the remaining members of Earth's mightiest heroes. With the Mad Titan having snapped half of the universe out of existence at the close of Avengers Infinity War, Endgame was all about the remaining heroes putting a stop to Thanos and somehow reversing his maniacal scheme. Once it was announced that this 20-second MCU picture was to clock in at the 3-hour mark, many presumed that the war between Thanos and the Avengers would play out in the film's final act. So when Endgame's lengthy opening sequence did what it did, that left moviegoers with their jaws agape. In simple terms, Avengers Endgame opens with Captain Marvel rescuing Iron Man and Nebula from space, herding together the remaining Avengers, the group collectively deciding to go and kill Thanos, and succeeding, with Thor beheading the Rogue. Of course, we did still get a final act Thanos vs Avengers battle, with Avengers Endgame bringing time travel into play in order to have the 2014 version of Thanos take center stage and square off with the likes of Cap, Stark, Hulk et al. Still, seeing the Eternal Deviant decapitated in what was essentially the picture's prologue, yeah, that was quite the shocker. Number 1. Alien 3. Yes, it may have been discussed plentiful times already here on What Culture, but it would be impossible to put together such a list and not make mention of the much maligned Alien 3. Going into this 1992 offering, audiences were expecting something vastly different to what they ultimately got. At the end of the beloved Aliens, Ripley, Hicks, young Newt and android Bishop put themselves in stasis and set sail for Earth. Not just that, but the initial teaser trailers for Alien 3 outright promised that the action would be heading to mankind's home planet, with a voiceover proclaiming how "we will discover on Earth everyone can hear you scream." In reality, not only did Alien 3 take place on the Fury 161 Correctional Foundry, but the opening moments made the shock decision to kill off fan favourites Hicks and Newt, and to lazily have those deaths take place off-screen as part of our Alien survivors crash landing on Fury 161. Not just were franchise fans left surprised by all of this, but many were left angered. So much so, there's still a clamouring to this very day for the series to revisit Hicks and Newt, as reflected by the excitement shown when it appeared that District 9's Neil Blomkamp would be bringing those characters back for his sadly now axed Alien sequel. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed anything, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there. And I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.